Okay, so it's time we are about to finally discuss the release of Opus 5 and how does it compare with Fable and GPT 5.6. I know this is coming a little late, but that's not a bad thing because if you would have looked at other people's opinion during the period it launched, most of them came back with a totally different experience and feedback after using the model for a while. Same was my case, and that is why here is the final take that I have after having used it for a while. I would like to start with the diagram and try to share in a approximate manner of how I kind of feel with this model. Like, say if there is an x-axis where mainly on the right side I have like code that I am comfortable shipping without much overhead, and on the left side there is like I need to review each line or at least responses during the whole run. So we have Table 5, GPT 5.6, and Opus 5, obviously. So, not surprisingly, Table 5 is the only model that comes around somewhere here because it is a model which is able to think deeply and given whatever task is able to actually look at the whole problem and come up with solution that even you might have not been able to foresee. So it is the only model with a higher level project manager level or an architectural level point of view thinking. So in cases where even in cases where you do not have the exact idea of how you might want to tackle this challenge or a problem, Table 5 is the model that you could count on to give you some very thorough and fundamentally backed responses. So we can think of this like a project manager level model who's able to actually produce and plan and architect and even provide solutions of high quality. And now, if we think of GPT 5.6, you can think of it like a top notch IC who's able to do anything that you assign it to. It would do overtime, it would do whatever it can to get your task done. That's the specialty of GPT 5.6 series because they are heavily RL'd into doing long running tasks and making sure they accomplish whatever they're assigned to. And so for me, GPT would lie somewhere over here, like table somewhere over here, and 5.6 somewhere here. And the specialty about 5.6 is that it is the only model compared or against these three models, which and today's time I'm able to like standalone use it even even without mixing with other models. I'll talk more about that point later. Uh, but coming to Opus 5, like this was supposed to be something in the middle of GPT 5.6 and Fable, but apparently it is kind of even below 5.6 for me, somewhere over here. Like it's not a model I would solely rely upon because it has various quirks, and you can say like it's like a miscellaneous IC who has a lot of IQ and capabilities, but you are never sure what it's going to do in the next moment. And so personally I don't feel that much confident while developing with this model. I would much rather have it work with GPT-5 and Fable 5. It is very less predictable. In fact, Theo summarizes it pretty well in his video. If you look at this clip,
Yeah. It's less predictable. Because again, it's like they took a model that was decently smart. They gave it the outputs it wants it to have, and said, "Do whatever you can to make your output look like this over and over again." And it can generate the right outputs. That's why it's benchmarking so well. That's why when I first started using it, looked at the code and looked at the plans it wrote, like it feels like a really dumb kid had someone help them cheat on their homework for so long that they learned the routine of looking like they were getting the right answer, but they just don't actually understand.
Yeah, and they're just trying to brute force, try and figure it out from somehow to get the answer.
They gave it all of the answers to all of the hardest problems and forced it to learn how to solve them all in a loop. And now it solves every problem like it's the hardest problem.
Yes, 100%.
Yep. That is literally what I feel, and that's how the model actually ends up feeling. In fact, personally, whenever I try to work with the models, I have came across so many situations where it has hallucinated a lot. So this one time I was trying to make it do some Git stuff where I asked it very specifically to create a new work tree, migrate our changes over there, and get a pull from the origin to get our branch synced with the origin, and then manually correctly merge all our changes back. But out of all the 4 5 steps, it just followed the first one, which is creating the first which is creating the new work tree and migrating the changes there. And after that, it went on making its own changes and own workflow. And even after I said like, why did you do that and stuff, it would have its own reason to justify, but it would again apologize for not sharing this previously or bringing this to my attention when we were discussing. So yeah, it keeps doing on things like this. Secondly, when it was first released, I was trying to debug some performance issue in an internal project that I've been working on, and we were trying to resolve a db latency issue, and it kept on forcing or trying to connect a y event with an x outcome. To me was very apparent that they don't have any direct links. So I kept on back pressuring it and asking the question and making it do some specific test around a region. And as I kept on forcing it to first check this, no, first check this, how are you claiming this? And doing that enough times, we ended up at a point where I was correct, and the issue that was being caused was due to a totally different reason. And going after that, it ends up spitting like every fix I propose along the way is now unnecessary. You push back on de optimizing and on hiding errors. Both instincts were correct, and blah blah blah. Point being, it kept on insisting on X being the result of Y when there was literally no justifiable reason to believe so. Yeah. So, given this and all the other related quirks of this model, it has made me quite hesitant when trying to use this model. So, overall, that's where we are at. But the thing is, it is not a totally unusable model, especially even if you're a decent developer and have access to these models, you never end up using just one model at a time. At least I hope so. Because each one has its own quirk. As I said, that Fable is like a PM, and GPT is like a highly active IC, and Opus is like a miscellaneous yet high level IC. So I just want to share how I use these models, and I would also like to highlight which model or harness to choose for which specific task, or which harness might benefit you most as per your use. So the two main harnesses being Codex app and the Cloud Code harness. So the thing that this is good as is for good for more inference, because as shared in my earlier videos, the amount of returns or the inference that you get on Codex subscription is far, far more greater than Claude Code. So that's out of the box the most convincing reason to use Codex and GPT models. Second one is they are good for computer use. Computer use of Codex app is literally the state of the art in current industry standards. Then it's good for many side projects because you don't want to invest your quality time in overlooking everything while making some internal tools or side projects. So for that, GPT is very good if you can just provide a detailed enough prompt and just set a goal to it. It will make sure that each of your points have been targeted and well tested. Even though the code might not be the quality that you like, but rest of things apart, it would make sure to get your job done. So now coming to Claude Code, we have definitely Fable being the topmost reason to getting any of the Claude Code sub. But even in today's time, it has become an even less shinier option because the Fable usage have been dropped to 50% of the weekly limit, which is, to be honest, not much. Then good for sub agent slash workflows feature. The sub agent workflows feature in Cloud Code is much better than Codex. And then for good code quality, as I raised point with the Codex harnesses, the GPT models write TypeScript like Python code. That's why TypeScript people ends up having to write their own TypeScript skills or specs to make GPT models write the code that they want their models to write like. On the other hand, Claude models do a very good job at writing good quality code and maintaining a good quality standard. So yeah, these are the topmost reasons I would like to highlight for anyone trying to choose between which harness to use for their use cases. Now, as to how I would suggest people use their harnesses would be definitely using a mixture of models. Like if you are Claude Code heavy, try to use Fable for planning, orchestrating, and reviewing. Because Fable, being a guardrail version of Mythos, is a very huge model and is no doubt capable of finding and brainstorming over any kind of topic much better than any other models available today. So you can have Fable doing the actual planning and reviewing and stuff, and using the sub agents and workflows features of Cloud Code to spin up Opus and even GPT models to do the actual implementations and research for you. Similarly, in the Codex app, you could have Fable if you want, or you could use Sol and again have Opus or Sol for code implementation. I'm not sure if everyone is aware that you can use GPT models or call GPT models through Claude Code and Claude models through Codex harnesses. You just have to mention properly in Claude MD files or agent MD files or skills, and you'd be good to go. So, in case you have been feeling like you're logged in to your specific harness, like if you're using Codex, so you can only use GPT models, that is not the case. So, please update your configs accordingly and leverage and make best of both the harnesses where possible according to the use case when you can, especially using the sub agent and the workflows features that the Cloud Code provide. You can actually end up saving a lot of context and usage whether you use GPT models or not. GPT models is just an even more cost efficient way to save on your subscription usage or API billing if you're an enterprise customer or get billed on API pricing. So, leveraging higher and bigger models for orchestrating and planning and getting the cheaper, more cost efficient models to do the bulk of your work is the most efficient and the go to way in today's time. So, please make use of it while you can. So, I guess that's it. That's my take on Opus 5 models and in general how I feel about these state of the art models today. Apparently, Opus 5 wasn't able to stand its own against Fable 5. or whatever claims that Anthropic did of Opus 5 being a cheaper alternate to Fable 5, but it's not. And Fable 5 is still the greatest model out there for actual complex tasks. So that's all from me now. Let me know in the comments how did you guys find Opus 5, and were you able to replace your Fable 5 with Opus? Until next time, peace.